This is the Wild Bunch Library Design Challenge. So if you're in the room for something else, stay. Seriously, welcome. We're really excited to have you all here. This is part 2 of a 2-part event. The first part was last Saturday, where we had a design thinking boot camp that was led by our friend Kevin Galloway, who's from the Wondry in mechanical engineering and dive, and Karina Gupta, who I don't think is here, but she said she might come by towards the end. Karina's a Design for America student, so if we hadn't had those wonderful partners, none of this would have happened. So we want to thank them with our whole hearts. So I thought it would be good to talk a little bit about what happened on Saturday, because not everyone here was able to be there Saturday, and it was a really, really fun event. Saturday was a design thinking boot camp, and students came to the Science and Engineering Library, which I'm Honora Eskridge, I'm the director of the Science and Engineering Library, and they came over and they learned about design thinking. We had 30 students. And exactly 30, so it worked out really perfectly in terms of getting people into teams. And we started out with this challenge question: how can we make the Vanderbilt Library's collections, facilities, or services more accessible and meaningful for our users? And as librarians, we know that we tend to use some jargon, and people don't always know what we mean when we use words like collections or services. So we decided to spend a little time on Saturday just talking with the students so they kind of would know what these fairly broad and maybe a little ambiguous terms, what they really mean from our perspective. And so we spent some time, we talked about our mission, we talked about what our role is at this university and how we try to support the mission of the greater university. And then we talked about collections and services and spaces, even though they probably know about spaces because they use them, but they may not know about all of them. And we talked about the scope of these things and the challenges we face as we try to deliver all of these to our students and to our faculty. And then we handed it off to Kevin and Karina, and the fun began. And they started talking about the design thinking process. And design thinking has these discrete stages that you go through. There's an empathy stage where you interview people. There's an ideation stage where you brainstorm. There's a narrowing, a defining stage. There's prototyping, there's testing, and then you go back around. And so Kevin and Karina took us through all of these steps over the course of the day. And during the empathy part, students got to interview librarians. There were 8 of us from the libraries there during the day, and we got to rotate amongst the tables, and we each got interviewed by 3 different groups, and they spent some time beforehand writing questions, interview questions for us, and then it was really fun. We got to come and go around and be interviewed. And there's Karina, actually, in front of the screen there, teaching part of the workshop. And so we just worked through the day, and there was lots of whiteboarding and many, many, many Post-its sacrificed themselves for our purposes on Saturday. And as the day was winding down, each group was circling around an idea. With Kevin's guidance, they started to circle around something. And when we left them, we said, okay, so if you want to continue on to the competition, keep working on this, and you have until Wednesday, and it's Sunday through Wednesday, to keep working on the idea and submit it to us. And so here we are, the big moment. So this is part 2 of the challenge part of the challenge. And this is where they get to compete for some really great prizes. So we have 6 teams. They will have 5 minutes to make their pitch. They will receive some questions from our judges who are here in the front row. And they need to show us what problem they're trying to solve and what evidence they gathered. And of course, they need to tell us the idea, what the idea is. And they need to tell us how they think we should implement it, or at least what some of the first steps are, if there are some challenges we need to face. So that's what's going to happen today. Before we get into it, I wanted to introduce David Bloom, who is from the Wild Bunch, and this is the Wild Bunch Library Design Challenge, and they're our sponsor, and he's going to talk a little bit about that and about our judges.
Thank you. Again, my name is David Bloom, and I'm one of the founding members of the Wild Bunch. We've been involved in the library since we made a gift to the library in honor of our graduation. And we've supported the library ever since in more meaningful ways as time has gone on. We had 35 members of the Wild Bunch here for brunch reunion week, this past reunion weekend. The Wild Bunch you may have heard a little bit about or not. It's scary what you can find on the website, but we were a group of irreverent but never irrelevant Vanderbilt alums of a certain age who support the library in many ways. Chancellor Hurd, for whom the libraries are named, was a friend of ours and a mentor to all of us. And we like to think that we mentored him too. He actually wrote us a poem in the spring of 1976, which we have still, and the library has, begging us to have him become a member of the Wild Bunch. And he was. And we're proud to say that. We are supporting this competition and other events like it because we want to keep the spirit of the Wild Bunch alive and encourage creativity and innovation in the next generation of Vanderbilt students. The Wild Bunch as a group, we always took pride in thinking outside the box. And that's actually a perfect segue into what you've done. You had to think outside the box to create this, to create your programs here. The first, second, and third place winners of this competition will receive cash prizes, certificates, and membership in the Wild Bunch. And it means you'll be invited to future Wild Bunch events also and get to meet the rest of the people. There's some remarkable people in the Wild Bunch. Your pitches will be judged for creativity, feasibility, innovation, and quality of the pitch. I will be serving as one of the judges today. I'd like to introduce the other 4 judges, and if you'll stand up when your name is called, I'll read a brief bio of each of them. Carolyn Floyd has been at Vanderbilt since 2011, first as a law school registrar and then as the law librarian for the past 4 years. She recently changed roles, is now the associate director of the Office of Immersion Resources at Vanderbilt. Valerie Hotchkiss, playing the role of Simon Cowell today, joined Vanderbilt as the university librarian in 2016. She's led 4 libraries in her career in the states of Texas and Illinois, and we've been proud to have her here for the last 18 months or so. She's been the vision behind our dream and implementing it to let us see it really happen. She studied Latin and Greek as undergraduates and has really taken the Wild Bunch activities to a whole new level, and we're very proud to partner with her. Keith Lusso?
Very good.
Good. Is the university architect and director of architecture and construction at the school. He personally manages the design and construction of over $900 million worth of construction and $10 million square feet of academic, research, athletic, housing, and infrastructure projects in the past 22 years at Vanderbilt. And I've heard you speak some years ago about the freshman commons and how it was designed for environmental standards. And I tell people all the time about the 155-gallon barrel of trash at the end of every meal after 1,200 meals. It's remarkable. Caitlin Cat Moon is a double-door, teaches human-centered design at Vanderbilt Law School as part of the law school's program on law and innovation. She co-organizes the annual Summit on Law and Innovation and organizes the Music City Legal Hackers, a multidisciplinary group of innovators who promote and facilitate the creation of technology to solve civil justice challenges. So now, let's begin. Honora, back to you.
Okay, this is just to all our little competitors here. So what's going to happen is I'll call you up. You're going to have your 5 minutes. I'm going to be your timekeeper. This is going to be your 1-minute warning. I'm sitting right in front of you, so hopefully you won't miss me. And then when you're done, the judges will ask you a question or two. Okay? All right.
I just wanted to interrupt for 1 second. I want to thank the musicians today for playing before. They're also going to be playing afterwards.
Okay, so our teams don't officially have names, but I've kind of made up names for them based on their cover slide. So our first team has 3 members, but 2 are here. It's Nora Eight Boucherbill, and Nora's not here, but it's Tatham Dees and Mubarak Ganiyu, and I'm calling them Team Accessibility. Come on up.
My name is Tatham, and our other member, Nora, couldn't be here today, but she helped us out with all of this, putting it together, and she's been a great resource, too. She works in Stevenson Library, so she's been able to help us a lot. And at the meeting, we gathered a lot of good information from librarians, and after the meeting, we also spoke with a lot of our friends asking about like what really needs to be improved in the library to get both worlds' views so we can like implement that together.
So one of the aspects of the library that I want to improve so much. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So one of the aspects of the library that we would like to improve a lot is the study spaces, and we believe we can do this by implementing some artworks into the library. So for each library, for instance, like Peabody Library would like implement an educational theme to it. Stevenson Library would have some futuristic technological theme into it. And we're also going to have separate sections in the library, such as group study, solo study sessions, solo study groups, and a tech area. And we're also interested in creating a user-friendly space in the library by the use of comfortable furnitures and a bunch of other and creating an environment that makes people feel at home while they study. And yeah, that's it.
All right. So really quickly, another way we would help differentiate areas is like by the type of study. Because if you notice, take Stevenson for example, there's a bunch of big areas where people try and do solo study, but there's not many spaces for group study, and people feel like that they have to be quiet and can't work together, even though there's round tables designed for group conversations. So to differentiate them, we'd add different art styles to different areas. So there'd be colorful artwork in the group sections, more bland space for serious solo study, and then the tech area where all the laptops and printers are could be differentiated with like cogs on the walls and stuff like that, just to represent the different meanings, and also have like quiet music in the group study sessions, because oftentimes in the library it's really silent, and that silence makes it hard to break in group study. So having quiet music in the background, not too loud to interrupt group work, would encourage people to talk and be more active in their group. Our next implementation will be a tech hub. When we were talking to the librarians, one of the most asked questions for the librarians were tech issues. So to improve this, we'd have like a small dedicated IT department in each of the libraries to come to with tech issues. So if the printer's working or the laptops aren't logging in right, you wouldn't have to bother the librarians at work. You could come to a specialized IT person who has a lot more experience dealing with these issues. The Tech Hub would also serve to refer people to online resources. The library has such a wealth of like ebooks and data sets that not many students know about. So if you're searching out for that, the Tech Hub would be a great place. So we could have a trial in the Stevenson Library, maybe next to the receptionist area, and then go on with further implementation of Tech Hubs if the Stevenson Library is a success. So one of our last big improvement would be an app. So this app would let students connect with library resources to find all the ebooks and data sets online. Also, if you have questions, some people are really shy in face-to-face conversations, so they could have messages to librarians in order to ask where a certain book is or just information about the library, and even like organize a meeting if they had some serious like research topic they needed help finding articles on. This app, it wouldn't be too expensive to implement because there aren't any physical changes to the library, but it would be able to add a lot of usability to library functions. So in conclusion, we're focusing on making the libraries accessible and connecting students and librarians together, providing our patrons comfortable learning environments, and trying to like implement technology to give students and librarians the best experience possible. Having a trial in Stevenson and then moving on from that to other libraries if this is a success, so they don't have to spend too much to try and revolutionize all the libraries at one time. Thank you for your time.
The judges have any questions for this group?
Yes, I have a question. So what kind of implementation challenges do you see for creating different study spaces? Like in one big room, if you're going to have group study, and I heard what you said about quiet music, but that's just kind of more noise. Did you guys consider white noise or any other things, or do you think that walls might be put up? What kind of challenges do you see for that?
I know I'm from Auburn, and Auburn University has a RBD library there, and for their group study spaces, they have little like slidable walls that you can put up, so that encloses the area so group work doesn't impact other people, and it also like limits out like a bunch of distractions so groups can really focus on something. And these walls at the RBD are like plain white and boring, so if you like spiced them up with a little bit of artwork, that would also make it a better experience.
I was just curious if you would distinguish between more of a quiet study versus more of a conversational type study.
So distinguishing between those two would be like what we're really working on with the different study areas. So a lot of people in Stevenson will go to the back walls and go to the carrels to study. Some people go into the back periodical room, and since the new biomed library is coming soon, a lot of the books from the periodical room would be moved, so we'd have more room to utilize in Stevenson at least. I know other libraries with like more floors could be sectioned off by floor to have like a quiet study floor for people who are doing serious solo work. Any further questions?
Yeah. So your app idea sounds really interesting. Do you know what currently is available online through the website? So is there already a database that you think would be pretty easy to translate into an app?
I know Vanderbilt has lots of electronic resources. I'm not sure how much, but this app would seek to like, instead of have the resources accessible through it, would point you towards it for computers, so you wouldn't have all this data online. And I know I was talking with Nora a while back, and students just don't know like a lot of the resources the library has. Like the big screen in Stevenson, she told me we could rent that out, and we had no idea. Yes. So like what that app would serve to do is like just link students with resources, electronic or checking out headphones.
So almost like a discovery tool.
Mm-hmm.
So you can easily figure out what your options even were.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
We have one more question.
Audience? Sure.
We're open.
Okay, I have a question. Your idea about designating certain areas by using artwork. I was wondering if you could, where that artwork would come from. Would it come from the campus, or collaboration with the art department, or commission, and you go to New York, artwork, or how you see the acquisition of that specified artwork for these designated areas. How you see that? How you would acquire them?
So there's this challenge actually that I'm participating soon, a Zome challenge, which has students design more artistic stuff using like building blocks and whatnot. So we could have student challenges to create like student work and have little tags for who created it to put up in the library and distinguish like have multiple competitions, so we could have like Vanderbilt students and maybe outsiders contribute to this process.
And I would also like to add that we also have students and friends we have friends in the art department who can actually assist us with like painting murals on the wall and other things like that.
Thanks so much. Take them in.
Thank you.
So our next group, I'm calling Team Link. And this is Sophie Druffner, Kevin Ifiora, and Kurt Lizan. Did I say that right? There you go. Come on up, guys. Gonna want to try to stay near the mic.
Oh, can I move over there?
They're not gonna pick you up, unfortunately.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Ifiora.
I'm Kurt Lizan.
I'm Sophie.
So every year, thousands of people visit the Nepal in search for a wonderful experience while exploring the mountains in Nepal. And there are native Nepalese people who are referred to as what are they called?
Sherpas.
A Sherpa. And this Sherpa serves to guide people through this wonderful experience of exploring their interests and stuff while hiking these mountains and stuff. And here at Vanderbilt each year, about 1,500 students arrive each year with wonderful interests and with the hopes to explore this interest during the time here. As an international student, I arrived here at Vanderbilt with various interests, and it's been a very challenging experience trying to navigate these interests myself and without a Sherpa, of course, and it has been very hard. And I believe hundreds of students are finding it hard. So we hope to fix this problem through our idea. So, yeah, you can take it from here.
Oh, we don't want to skip over ourselves. We're pretty important. So a quick introduction of who we are. We're a multidisciplinary group across a number of years at different points in our journey. And we have varying levels of design experience, but we're hopeful that we can help with this process in any way possible. All right, so before we go any further, I want to restate the challenge statement. We're looking to make the library's collections, facilities, or services more accessible and meaningful. So in order to understand which resources are already accessible and meaningful, we reached out and took a survey of about 50 Vanderbilt University students. As you can see, most students use the space most students use the library as an inanimate set of objects, set of information. They'll use it as a workspace, as computers, as printers, or if we're lucky, maybe even books. But very few students actually use the staff and the services. As an electrical engineer, the universal problem, the universal struggle of my endeavor is to design circuits that balance area, power, and performance. But I asked, in our research process, we asked a lot of librarians, what's the universal struggle of a librarian? And they said that it was to get students to understand that librarians themselves are the greatest resource, that they can be the Sherpa that leads students through the path.
Okay, so we started with our problems. We developed a problem statement. When we wanted to develop a problem statement, we looked at the Vanderbilt Library mission statement as well as the Vanderbilt mission statement. So the Vanderbilt Library mission statement stated that it's fundamental to the library's goals, to the university's goals to advance scholarship and learning. And the Vanderbilt mission statement talked about developing leaders in the quest for new knowledge. So as you can see, we developed our program, Leaders in the Quest for New Knowledge, to develop these creative leaders using the resources of the librarians. So in our program, the librarians function as links into greater knowledge, and they can go along the path as the student continues to explore their interest. I'm going to talk a little bit about that more. Okay. So how do the librarians find the students? How do they go to the students? We want to get the librarians out of their offices and into the actual physical space of the university. I know this is a program that's being advanced as we speak in already implemented programs such as pop-up libraries. And I'll talk about that a little second. So we developed the first stage of the first stage of a Vanderbilt student's experience is in a visions group, where every Vanderbilt student is required to take a visions group And so the librarians go to the visions group and they ask the students, like, what are you interested in? And they send out a survey to the Vanderbilt students saying, what are your top 3 interests? Because every interest at Vanderbilt has a librarian. I didn't even know this until yesterday when I discovered that I actually have a personal librarian. That made me feel really special. She's actually sitting right there, is Carlin, personal librarian for my math major. Through the pop-up libraries where librarians sit in places such as Feathering Guild, they say hi to students, they say, we have a lot of resources, what do you need? When students declare their major, they get an email from the librarian saying, we just discovered you declared a medicine, health, and society major. I'm the medicine, health, and society major librarian. Can I help you advance your research interest? So these students coming to Vanderbilt who don't know what they're interested in, they fill a little survey given to them by the librarian, top 3 interests. They're then matched to that librarian in that subject area. They're called liaison librarians, so in the link structure. They have a one-on-one consultation. We had a constraint with this because we know that some majors are more popular than others. So we said that, out of your top 3 interests, who's the most available librarian out of that? Then together they develop a study and research plan to dive into that research interest.
So some quick notes on implementation. To prototype this design, we would only reach out to 15 visions groups, about 250 first years, and see what type of response we get from one-on-one interaction with librarians. Then, once we've verified it, we would roll out the full version, reaching all 90 visions groups, increasing the frequency of pop-up libraries, and starting up a system for a declared major response email that's automated. Thank you for your time.
Judges, do you have questions?
I do.
Yes.
I'd like each of you to tell me when you were going through Visions, when you got a tour of the library, and how your library orientation personally took place.
So I think personally my library orientation experience happened when I took general chemistry because Stevenson Library is right there. So I would just study in Stevenson all the time. I never actually personally got any kind of visions experience in the library. We were mostly focused in the room that we met in, so we didn't really get out of that room.
Yeah, I would agree that I don't recall, I'm a senior, so it's been a few years, but I don't recall ever having a tour of the library or a librarian come and visit.
I guess I could say the same. There was no official tour of the library, but I began working at the library and stuff, so as someone working there, I have that view of, as a student and also as a worker there, I get to see there's an obvious breach and stuff.
Yeah.
So in the first year writing seminar, you didn't have any library introduction?
I wasn't technically in a first year writing
Yeah,
seminar.
and also engineering majors don't have to take that, so we're never introduced.
That's interesting.
I
That's
can
what we're
speak for
hoping.
the College Scholars Program because that's what I took in place of a first-year writing seminar. And even though they emphasize breadth and depth in the College Scholars Program, we never had any kind of library introduction.
Karen?
Yes.
Did you take 50 surveys since last Saturday?
Yeah, we did.
How did you get, how many surveys did you put out?
Wait,
We have one.
I may have
survey.
misspoke. I
Oh.
meant 50 students.
50 students responded.
To survey.
Yes.
And how many were asked?
Oh,
It was an open link.
Open link.
Yes.
Interesting. And
Get it?
that's a pretty good, I mean, that's pretty good. I'm just marveling at that alone. I'm still stuck on your first slide. But that's pretty good because one of the things with your plan might be that you're depending on responses to a survey to get the students to go in. Do you see any sort of way of getting students to reply? How will they know this is something that should interest them?
So how should they know the program, the research program, the research methodology experience should interest them?
Right. and that-
To start off, we'd like to clarify that the survey is one way that we could get a one-on-one introduction to a librarian, but knowing that there's a subject librarian for each student's field of study, we'd like to automate that process. We had one librarian tell us in our interviews that whenever a new faculty member comes, he reaches out to them and tells them, hey, I'm your subject librarian. If you have any interests or need resources, let me know. We'd like to do that same thing for students, where it's automatic. And the student,
You can automate that, so there's a moment when they declare their major, and that's when we
Yeah.
would...
yes, exactly. Mhm.
Thank you.
Any last questions?
I just had a question about, as far as the implementation of your plan,
Yes.
have you been able to
So going back to our implementation slide, it would require the manpower to visit all 90 visions groups, which we divided amongst about 30 librarians, we guessed, out of the approximately 70 at the university. We would have to increase the frequency of pop-up libraries, so that's maybe a 4-fold increase, which is considerable resources, but not impossible. And the declared major response email would likely be the effort of 1 or 2 system administrators or IT personnel.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
All right. This is our library's Slays group. This is Sam, Rasul, and Caleb. And you've got a couple team members who aren't here, so maybe mention them.
Okay. Yes, we have 2 team members who couldn't make it today. We have Caroline and Samantha. But my name is Caleb.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Rasul. And today we're going to be introducing our plan to improve the library. Okay, so we're using this design thinking approach, and along the presentation we'll have little bars on the slides denoting which aspect it is. And so to start off, we talked to librarians and we asked what they thought about the library system. And this is what we found.
I enjoy students around me. I just love working with students. I mean, that's why it's fun to work with students.
So what we found is that a lot of the students view the librarians as a resource of last resort, whereas the librarians are much more open than people think. So we started thinking, how can we change that perception in order that students might be connected with the skill set to find information?
So the first step in our process was brainstorming. At this stage in the game, we basically began throwing out random ideas that, although you can see from our beautifully designed, aesthetically pleasing collage over here, many of which are entirely unrelated but are all entirely creative. To the left is a picture of our many used sticky notes, of which we enjoyed very much.
I wanted us to have a fleet of dogs at the library, but we thought it was a little hairy.
Okay, so our proposed solution. We came up with a few different ideas, and to make sure our ideas were original, we made sure that to do a bit of background research and make sure that these things didn't already exist. So our first idea was curated class-by-class resource guides. So we looked online, and they existed. Online, on the website that already exists, curated class-by-class resource guides are already there, and none of us knew that. So we moved on to our next brilliant idea. Major-specific librarians. So we went back to the website, and it existed. So oh no, we're running out of ideas. This continued through a few more stages where we brought up our greatest ideas, went online, did some research to see if they already existed, and every time we found that these resources already exist, but nobody knows about them. So it basically boils down to this. Our library kicks butt, but students are pretty lazy. While Vanderbilt students are some of the most motivated students on the planet, like we can all attest to that, I'm sure, generally going out of your way to do something such as like interact with a librarian generally takes more time than many Vanderbilt students have, and I can speak as a cross-college double major. There's not a lot of time. All right. So we took a survey over the last week. We had an initial survey. In our second survey, we got responses from 124 students. Oops.
And
we actually have these lovely handouts for the judges that include the questions that we asked, because it's a lot of information to display on one side.
Thank you.
Yes. So basically, the first question you can see on the left is library services. When we asked the 124 students who are across colleges, across grades, backgrounds, you can see that less than 50% of them were aware of the resources available, even though there are a plethora of wonderful resources, none of them knew about them. The following questions followed up on this idea of awareness. And you can see that in most responses, most of students were interested in what we had to offer and what the library already had to offer.
So with those in mind, we came up with 3 pillars to bring into our final conclusion. And these were publicity, outreach, and access. And we needed to work these together to get our final solution. We came up with this 3-pronged approach. First, we would supply information to the students. And we would do this through a customized class-by-class email. Librarians would work with professors to find which materials could not only help improve students' GPAs, but also be of interest to them in that class. Second, we would integrate into either the already existing Vanderbilt app or into a new app that would give library hours and locations of librarians. This could be expanded later to add collections and other things. So after they have the information, next we'd focus on activating them. And this would be done through a mandatory vision session, as we discussed earlier. Many of us are engineering, and we didn't ever have a chance to come to the library and hear the resources. And we've, in the survey, found that there was great interest if students were to come here and learn a lot about the library. It could have great impact. Second, club meetings. Having the specific librarians come into clubs and speak with people who are interested in their subject area to tell about what the library has to offer. The final step would, of course, be retaining the students. And we've decided a tea time would be an interesting way to do this. A casual weekly get-together where librarians can interact one-on-one with students, which is something that we found earlier they enjoy doing. And there'd be food to bring some students in. Finally, more boot camps like this. We didn't know everything the library had to offer until we had this opportunity to really dig in and get working hands-on with the librarian. The key of our solution is that it is feasible and realistic. It is simple enough that aspects of it can be done today. And it utilizes a framework that Vanderbilt already has to get information into the hands of students. The first steps would be working with professors to compile the information for the emails. There already are some class-by-class research guides, but many of these are incomplete and could use expanding. The second step would be creating the Visions curriculum. This can later be expanded on and will also be used again and again, year by year. To test this, it's quite easy. You can send out more surveys to students, maybe through the app, maybe through, like we'd used a Google survey. And you can also look at the materials that's recommended and see if the frequency of them being checked out is increased over time. A couple challenges are for tea times, you would need some librarians willing to stay a little extra to meet with students. And curating class by class, as it involves working with professors, is a lot of moving parts. However, we do believe that would be worth it for the impact. Finally, we'd like to thank the librarians that helped us out and say thank you to all for listening to us in our presentation.
Thanks, guys. Judges.
So what time is tea time?
Well, on Highland, they meet at about 9 p.m., but really it could happen anytime. It's late, but that's not what we'd recommend for the library. Really, whenever there's food, students will come.
So 9 p.m. What if we have music, too?
Music would be great.
And as a Blair student, I think that would be a great way for Blair students to interact with main campus, because that's often you're in your Blair bubble, and then there's the rest of main campus. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Again, I just wanted to ask about your resources for implementation. Do you think that it would require many more resources than currently provided by the library?
Well, I think that since a lot of ours is working on making connections that students will actually utilize, we could involve students in some of the groundwork. So lots of volunteering, for example, for making the resources, the class guides, by involving librarians and students and the professors. And in that way, the additional resources are, in a way, I guess, subsidized.
And also, while it would take man-hours on the parts of librarians, our actual solutions are rather inexpensive. It doesn't involve much upfront cost.
Oh, and one more thing. So the online resource guides to which we referenced earlier are primarily major specific. So we were wondering whether or not it would be more beneficial for major specific librarians to interact with the professors who teach the major specific classes in order to develop class-by-class resource lists instead of just major specific resource lists that don't necessarily pertain to each individual student.
So I joined Transportation and Systems Engineering. I get a book not only on the math of that, but also on things I may find interesting. The history of that, a fiction novel that kind of relates to the history of trains in America. I don't know, but the type of things where I can read it and not only improve my GPA, but also improve my enjoyment of the subject.
Any more? All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
here come Rebecca, Sophia, and Selena. Okay, there we go. The open book team. They move these balloons.
All right, well, we're very excited to introduce our solution to you, which we have named Open Book. I'm Sophia Anderson. I'm a human and organizational development major and a sophomore.
I'm Selena Liu, also a sophomore majoring in mathematics and economics.
I'm Rebecca Arp, and I'm a studio art major here, also a sophomore.
So we started out by interviewing a number of librarians to identify the dominant issues that we should target. Based off of these conversations, we found that the #1 most valuable and most underutilized resource at Vanderbilt libraries are librarians. According to our survey of 114 Vanderbilt students, less than half of students are able to identify whether an adult in a library is a librarian. Right? So if a student doesn't know who to address their questions to, they're obviously much less likely to ask for help. Additionally, 79% of the time that students are working in libraries are outside of normal working hours. So if you're cranking out your final paper in the middle of the night and you need help right away, there are no librarians around to help you. Additionally, some of the librarians that we talked to actually mentioned that they feel like they're on call a lot of the time because they're responding to student emails outside of their normal hours, and that's really not a part of their job description. Upon doing further research, we also found that very few of the libraries on campus require librarians to wear a name tag. And this lack of consistent identification is a serious problem because, once again, it's really discouraging students from feeling comfortable coming forward and asking questions. So we have taken a two-pronged approach in addressing the accessibility and approachability of Vanderbilt librarians. Our first objective is to create a platform through which Vanderbilt students can ask their librarians for help at any time and any place. And our second objective is to provide all librarians across each of the 9 libraries with a consistent form of identification. So our proposal is improving the accessibility and approachability of Vanderbilt librarians so that students are able to access the most valuable resource available to them on Vanderbilt campus.
So in order to ensure that students have access to librarians when they need it, we came up with a few ideas. We initially thought about placing a librarian in each library 24/7 to answer any student questions, but quickly realized this would be cost prohibitive and would only reach students that were actually physically in these libraries. But we wanted to bring the library to the student, and so we turned to technology for a way to give virtual constant access to a librarian to students. We considered developing an app for this purpose, but we came into a few limitations. First, an app would unlikely to be a standalone product as the interface would still likely be integrated into the website in some way. Second, students who are performing research and writing these papers are already on their laptop computers rather than their mobile devices. Therefore, we combine these ideas to come up with our final idea, which is an online instant messaging platform on the website that will give students live 24/7 access to chat with a Vanderbilt librarian. Our second goal is to create an atmosphere of approachability around librarians when students actually physically interact with them. To do this, we had multiple ideas as well, considered putting name tags with librarians, giving them a specific uniform of some sort, such as a vest. We thought about putting signs on librarian office doors or allowing students to interact with librarians in more casual contexts, such as a librarian in the house event on Commons for first-year students, because they already do things like professors in the house when they have their floor meetings. So that leads to our two-pronged solution. The first step is the online messaging platform. We call this Open Book, and it is an open channel of communication between the librarians and the students. Because it is directly integrated into the library website, any student will be able to chat with a librarian at any time from any place, and this can be integrated into all 9 libraries easily. Only one librarian will need to be on call each night, and so this will be a cost-effective way to minimize the overtime they're already doing while providing students what they need. Additionally, we would like to place an open book kiosk in a prominent location in each library to publicize this resource and give students direct access when they're in the libraries as well. The second step of our solution is to provide clear identification for librarians. This will be done through official name tags that all librarians will wear in all libraries. Additionally, librarians will each wear a fun Ask Me button or pin that will encourage students and emphasize that librarians really are here to help, and they don't mind being interrupted by students to ask questions. Additionally, we would like to place signs on librarian offices. After our discussions, we realized many librarian offices are actually outside of these libraries. And so we wanted to put signs welcoming students to come in and ask questions to show that librarians are available even if they're not out and about.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right. So I went ahead and created some mock-ups of what I think OpenBook could look like on the Vanderbilt's website. And so I've envisioned this as an instant messaging tab that's available on the bottom of every page on the website. So as students are navigating, as soon as they come up with a question or feel they need the librarian's help, they can click on the chat bar and instantly access that librarian. Additionally, as Selena said, we want to put physical kiosks in each of the 9 libraries. And so this would be a good way to publicize the new resource on the website to the people that are physically in the libraries and that may not have visited the actual website yet. And here's just another mock-up of how this could potentially look on the website. So immediately after implementing our OpenBook application, we would like to track student usage of it within the first month. And we'd also like to maintain data on how many librarians are approached before and after we implement our new identification measures. A challenge that we did think of when we were thinking about OpenBook is that we would have to change librarian schedules to include these new night shifts. But because Vanderbilt employs so many librarians, the amount of time they would have to spend doing these night shifts is very occasional. And we think that the benefits of the program would outweigh the costs. Overall, implementing OpenBook and our new identification measures solved the problems that are most relevant to our libraries here, which is the inaccessibility of librarians and the unapproachability of librarians. Thank you so much. Any questions?
So the OpenBook chat bar is on every page of the library website or the Vanderbilt website?
The library website.
Although, I mean, if Vanderbilt would like to put that on their main website, we
We're
just
not
didn't know
opposed.
what the hoops would look like to get that done, but definitely on every page of the library website.
So I was trying to remember if you did surveying of students and surveying librarians with some of these concepts.
So we actually conducted interviews with the librarians, but the students we did interact with through surveys, yes. I actually did. So I took a first-year writing seminar in a Russian literature course. So we did have a personalized consultation with a librarian on the resources available to us specifically.
Do you think that helped you with your class and your final projects? And do you feel that gave you an entree into the library and tour the library?
For me personally, I did not need to utilize a librarian as a resource for my final paper because it was building off of a lot of previous concepts that I had written about in the class. And I think that actually goes for a lot of my friends in the class as well. So while I think it was helpful to maybe promote that first interaction with a librarian in person, I can speak for myself and my friends in saying that it wasn't necessarily effective in actually having that continue into utilizing librarians in research.
I guess for another perspective, I actually also did have a consultation with a librarian. I took a first-year writing seminar over Jane Austen, and we did have a librarian come in, show us how to use the resource guides, show us the way around the website. And we did definitely go and use those resources. The resource guides are incredibly helpful once you know they're there. There are so many things that I've used those resource guides for. But in terms of interacting with librarians, I would say the same thing where I didn't really go back to the librarian if later on. It was obviously also an introductory class, so it wasn't something with super in-depth knowledge that would be beyond the scope of the resource guides. But I think that's a common problem that we're just trying to address in this solution, and in a lot of the solutions that you've seen is that students don't understand why they need librarians. And if they do, they don't know how to find a librarian right now. And so those are just some of the issues that we're looking at solving.
Any last questions for the judges?
The librarian in the house, that's a great idea. And you were thinking just for Commons first-year people, or could we go to all the residence halls?
I think you could implement it in all the residence halls. We came up with the idea because they already have a professor in the house session on Commons. I remember we had an English professor come and sit through our first floor meeting. And so that's where the naming came from and the idea came from. But every floor has a floor meeting, so I assume you could easily integrate that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, ladies. Okay, our fifth team is Rochelle and Braden and Skylar and Alex. Team interaction. Okay, guys, it's all yours.
Oh. Hi, everyone. All right, so we're the 15, and there's 4 of us.
Yeah, I'm Braden. I'm a sophomore mechanical engineering major.
Hiya, I'm Skylar. I'm a freshman history major.
I'm Alex. I'm a freshman cognitive studies major.
And I'm Rochelle. I'm a first-year master's student.
So when we were thinking about what we were going to do for our project, we thought about our own experiences, and we asked students and librarians. And one problem we found from the librarian side is that students really aren't using the resources that they provide. And from the student side, the library is very cold and uninviting. It's intimidating. It's just like, personally, as a freshman, my whole year wandering around, I didn't see the library anymore as a study space. So we came up with a 3-prong approach to fix these 2 problems.
So all 3 of our solutions are fairly small. There's nothing including any demolishment, no total restructuring of the library, but this is all intended to invite students in and basically take the horses close to the water as we can get them to utilize the library resources. So first off, I don't know if the adults in the room are familiar with this, but when a student registers for class, they go through YES into student registration, and they're presented with this screen as they get their information, and that includes the book list. Every student will see this screen and be very well acquainted with all the links and all the information provided there. Because we found that a lot of students just don't know even where to begin looking for the resources, we'd want to include the LibGuide or other library resources that were available for that class or that department. That way students could have something immediately there that they are literally forced to see to help start off their journey of interacting with librarians and interacting with the resources that are available for these classes.
So, once, I know this is kind of a funny picture, but once students have a reason to go to the library, how do they get around the library? Now, of course there are librarians, but hopefully with the influx of students, they can't help everybody, right? So, we propose to put small, cheap LED lights on the end of every bookshelf. And so when you have a book in your cart on your phone on the app, on the library app, and when you're near the LED through like RFID technology, similar to like your Commodore card, the light will go off, and so you'll know which bookshelf to get. Because believe it or not, a lot of people don't know how to use the Library of Congress system or the Dewey Decimal System or anything like that, myself included. So.
So then our last idea is more based on implementing some fun and giving some ownership to the students as they use the library. A big problem is it's just a space to be and to go cram, maybe cry for a little while, and then go home. But our idea, first implementing in Stevenson, would be erasable murals that students could participate in. And beyond just being able to draw and be creative in the library and take a break from all the studying that we're doing, we'd want to invite different orgs and different groups of people to propose questions to act as a prompt. For this, we have an example of drawing a robot, but it'd also be worthwhile to ask other groups if there was a question that they thought could enhance the lives of Vanderbilt students, or they were just genuinely curious about seeing how they would respond in writing or pictures. And again, it's fun, and people love it. It's like when you draw on the wall as a kid. Oh, do you want to do that?
So implementation is very simple. With Yes, it's pretty much just, you could probably do this overnight because there's already like the class database with the libguides and everything. So LED lights, we thought would have been a great opportunity for engineering students to get involved in the library. Because personally, as an engineering student, I probably have the least use for books in like Central Library, for example. And if there's one thing engineering students have to do, whether they like it or not, is play with LEDs. And there's plenty of organizations dedicated to LEDs. I'm not kidding, like the Maker Club and stuff. And so it would be a great opportunity for even engineering classes to come in as projects to implement this LED system. So, yeah.
And then finally with the wall mural, basically all it would take is a few tubs of whiteboard paint and some markers. Anyone could come in and contribute to the art that's actually on the wall. That's the whole point of it. So really the strength for a lot of these is they could all be up in a month if the library wanted to go through with them. It's pretty, I wouldn't say uninvolved, but it's cost efficient and quick.
Okay. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have any questions?
The LED navigators, do they require us to have an RFID tag in every book or just at every shelf?
No, I was, it could reference what shelf it's in through the app. And so the LED knows all the books in the shelf, basically, like from a broad point of view.
Like this call number to that call number?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yes.
It seems like your idea for the whiteboards for random doodling or purposeful doodling reminded me, though I don't live in Nashville, of when you walk into Rand, there's a whiteboard to the right.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that when we were here for reunion playing, we wrote "The Wild Bunch Lives" on it. And took a picture and sent to everyone in the Wild Bunch. So that's a reasonable and easy idea. It can be integrated with some of the other ideas that people have.
Mm-hmm. Gives you a sense of ownership, for sure.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I like the libguides, and yes, that's a good idea. And you're right, it could be implemented rather quickly in a crude way.
Mm-hmm.
Then you could, librarians could work on it and make libguides that were more focused on that particular
Mm-hmm.
class.
Yeah. But just to get students even aware of the fact that the libguides are out there, it's a really great way to like have people just stumble across it and be like, oh, what are these libguides? And then just kind of take them as an introduction point.
Yeah, have it bookmarked even the semester before you start studying. So.
And I can definitely say as a master's student where we had to write a lot more, it definitely would be useful because there are definitely classes where my cohort members are like, I want to take that, but I don't think I can find the research for it, or / I don't have time to go look for it. So if they can actually see like, oh, there's like 5 books at least, then they will be like, okay, maybe I can actually use this and take it.
Another perk of this that I forgot to mention is a lot of our textbooks are already in Acorn or available physically in the library, but a lot of poor sweet souls do not know that. So they give Barnes & Noble their money, and not to have anything against Barnes & Noble, they're lovely people, but I like a good deal, and I'm sure others do, and having that information more directly linked might behoove some people.
Yeah.
Yes?
I just wanted to mention there is technology available that works off of these wireless APs, the antennas, where it can triangulate between those and know where you are on a floor plan. So you might be able to implement your idea without actually having to engage the LED lights, but
Okay.
having a floor plan.
Okay.
And just mapping things out, you can tell where they are. You can show up kind of the bookshelf that we're looking at.
Gotcha.
Just
Yeah.
as an
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our last team did not have anything on their front slide to make me give them a name, but I'm calling them the Better Late
We're
Than
the
Never
2018
Boys.
Library Design Challenge.
And you know why I call you the better late than never boys. So this is Jay, John, and Amit, and Jay's not here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Kim.
My name's Amit Iyer.
It's an honor to be here today, to have the time and attention, of course, the librarians, but of course, the Wild Bunch as well. And with that, I'd love to just get straight into it. I'm a third year here at Vanderbilt studying mathematics and computer science.
I'm also a third year studying mathematics and economics.
And unfortunately, Jay could not be here today, but he's a fourth year studying engineering science. So the problem isn't really a problem, it's more of an opportunity, and that's really kind of portrayed by this. There's a misalignment between the known and unknown needs of our client, the student, and the resource allocation of the library. Known and unknown needs is kind of emphasized here because it turns out that after a lot of talks with the librarians, students don't even know the amount of resources that they have access to despite going through these visions groups and so on. So we did a little bit of surveys to really understand our client, undergraduate and graduate Vanderbilt University students, and our insights showed that they want variable noise. So it turns out that students like studying in different environments. Some like listening to music, some like some background noise, some like complete silence, and unsurprisingly, nobody likes cafeteria noise. Second insight, they use the library for different things. They use it for research databases, the book checkout, the interlibrary loans, and computers. But the one thing that we could find through these surveys is that they all want privacy. They all want their own space that they can really own. As we can see here, 87% of respondents say they want either a private room, a private desk, or at-home studying over a public table. So with that, we kind of based our solution on this ability to support the students in their goals to achieve maximal productivity in the library by providing them with the resources that would really allow them to do so. So with that, I'll hand it off to Amit.
Right, so we got all this data from the different surveys, and we really wanted to come up with a simple and feasible solution that would address our insights, right? So we came up with a three-pronged solution. Private spaces that are able to be used personalizably, if that's a word, and then which would allow for productive study. So let me address private spaces first. As John mentioned, 87% of the students that we surveyed wanted to work in a private setting. So why not give them what they want? Give them more private desks, give them more booths, more private rooms, because that's how they study best. After we allow them to work in private spaces, what we also realized is students use the libraries in totally different ways. Some want different levels of noise, some use the library to check out books, some use the interlibrary loan. The key theme here is variability. So why not allow students to personalize their workspaces through additions like screen desks? What I mean by that is they can pull a screen up or down depending on whether they want to work in private or not. Integrated technologies such as something as simple as lighting that is able to vary in temperature and intensity depending on the time of day. Whiteboard painted walls, that's something we actually did some research into. There's a paint called Idea Paint that is actually LEED certified, which would comply with Vanderbilt's LEED certification that would allow students to personalize their space, and also variable height desks to go along with the ergonomic theme of when people want to stand or sit while they're working. After we have, established private and personalized use, we also came across one more problem, which a lot of groups here have recognized. Students don't know what resources that the library has to offer, and most importantly, they don't know when to use the library's resources. I was talking with Ms. Eskridge, and she mentioned that the biggest problem is that students don't know when it's appropriate to use Google and when it's appropriate to use the actual library databases. So what we came up with was there's a protection of minors module that every student has to complete before they come into, or before they start the Vanderbilt year. What if we were able to develop a module that would educate students in actually what makes a credible source? Because if students knew that, they would know when they couldn't use Google and when they actually had to seek out the library's resources, because that would provide them with the actual motivation to come into the library and seek out those resources. And it would make the resources relevant, which is the most important part. And then finally, something else that could aid in productive study was something that one other group actually mentioned. I can't do a better job of explaining it, but it's basically the instant messaging thing. I think that's a great idea, being able to contact the librarians on a 24/7 basis or just a lot more conveniently. So that's something we're going to look into implementing.
Right, so clearly there's a lot of different variables here in terms of implementation, and it's really a collection of tools that really enable student productivity. we really don't want to undercut the design process and the iteration and the prototypes that are going to be required for each individual one of these to make sure that the implementation is as good as possible. But from a higher level, it really breaks down into two main steps. Step one, make the room. First idea here is to centralize book storage. After looking at the floor plans, especially for central library, each floor uses about anywhere from less than 25 to more than 50% of the space for books. Unfortunately, that isn't the primary reason that students are coming to these libraries, and we really want to align that need with what the library is providing. Leveraging an interlibrary system in which we can send out books on an ad hoc basis to the students will really allow us to be very space efficient with our books while still kind of preserving the usability. And we can really do this on a gradual basis, phasing out the books on a least recently used basis to ensure that no student productivity is being disrupted significantly. Step two, of course, is enabling that productivity. Two main steps here that could really get the ball rolling is first to develop a minimum viable product for that educational module. Think about, from library surveys, what really the most important information that they want to get across to their students. And second, begin implementing the design changes on a floor-by-floor basis. We really believe that this plan is feasible and really tangible. And through gradual implementation and iteration, we can really get it right to ensure that we can achieve those three goals of private, personalized use, and productivity, while again not significantly disrupting the students' productivity habits. And with that, we'd love to open up the room to some questions.
What was the size of the cohort that you surveyed on the privacy versus open tables question?
22 students.
You talked about creating more private spaces for individual study and group study, and implementation for that. Does that involve building walls? I know you mentioned screens.
I think the screens would be a cheaper option. I think that would be a great way to get started and see if people are actually making use of it. And if there seems to be a lot of usage of that, maybe we can invest in walls in the future. But I don't think we should go straight to the walls right away, because I think screens would be, as we like to say, a minimum viable product.
Or perhaps movable partitions. People could slide around or reconfigure depending on the size of their group. They could or could not have whiteboards attached to them to integrate some of the other ideas, but it sounds like that's expensive to do something like that. So have you thought about cost and whether these study spaces would be ad hoc or permanent, and whether a student would be willing to rent something like that or pay a fee for exclusive use or anything like that?
We certainly didn't consider, say, movable walls or anything like that. But I guess in terms of implementing, the actual desks with the screens versus the rooms, I mean, that's a pretty big cost-benefit analysis that we have to look a little bit more into to understand, how many students are really using the rooms simply to have a private space. I know that I've walked across rooms 500 times, and there's just one kid in there, right? So, if it's sufficient, if we can provide 80% of the benefit with 20% of the cost by simply using a desk with a screen, then that would be 80% of the space. Awesome, thank you.
They did a great job, didn't they? So now our judges have their difficult job to do. They're going to retire to the secret room behind the screen, and our musical accompaniment by Blombo will begin. And judges, take your time. I think we're good. Yes, I'm going to take care of that.
I'm not doing the limbo anymore.
Wait, where is it? Screen.
But I want to thank all the judges. I want to thank the musicians, all the different parts of Vanderbilt. The Wild Bunch, we had this dream. How can we promote free speech and deep thought and thinking outside the box? And frankly, we were in New Orleans enjoying a weekend mini reunion together. How can we, honor Chancellor Hurd, whose legacy is free speech? And that's one of the most important things that happens in this campus. So We have awards, we have certificates. Each of you will get a little paperweight, which has some deep meaning, but a little bit art. It says the Wild Bunch out with the Vanderbilt logo, and it says Ubi fera sunt. Anyone know Latin?
I do.
It was her idea. Anyone ever heard of Maurice Sendak? Children's author? That means where the wild things are. And so, did you have it?
Oh, we were discussing that earlier.
Okay. We were named by the chancellor, by the way, and it has a magnifying glass, which for me, since I'm getting a little older, is good, but also a magnifying glass signifies deeper thought, looking deeper into projects. So the winners are going to get one of these, and we hope that you think about this event and all the wonderful things you've done when you use this as a paperweight or otherwise. That being said, the third place winner today is Team 5, Interaction. Would you please come up? That's a quick editing here. There you go. Thank you. Thank you.
Wait, there's a certificate?
Certificate too. Congratulations.
Pass that to Rachel. Sorry, they weren't dated.
As she's dating them, I will say that at graduation, one of the fun Wild Bunch stories is that at graduation, we all gave all the members of the Wild Bunch gave the chancellor a red carnation. And the first person who did it, obviously alphabetically, was the president of the Student Government Association, and no one really thought much about it. I was second, alphabetically. And when I gave him the carnation, he looked at me, and I could see in his eyes, got it. Now I understand what they are. We always wore red carnations to important events, and we still do to this day. So when the third person who came up, he actually put his hand out to receive the carnation before he reached out with his diploma. And then we knew that we had him. And it was really cool. It's just one of those very subtle little things. So it was great. So thank you very much. Congratulations. We appreciate all your work. Sure. Yeah.
See that? You guys have done this before, haven't you?
All right, thank you. The second place team is Team 3. How many people were in your team? Three.
There's 5 total.
Okay.
Right, 5 total.
Yes.
Here, I'll just hand you all those.
Thank you.
And here, why don't you just...
The names are Samuel Bender,
Congratulations.
Razul
Thank
Dent,
you so much.
Caleb Larney, Carolyn Jansen, and Samantha Rowland.
We've got a photo op, guys.
All right. And of course, this is going to take a while. No, you're done.
Thank you. And the first place team, the winning team, is Team 2. Congratulations.
You look shocked. A couple of you look
I
shocked.
love your expression. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And the winning 3 teams also become members of the Wild Bunch. You get invited to future Wild Bunch events. You get your picture taken now.
Cool. All righty. And thank you.
I'm just so proud of all of you. I wish that my friends from the Wild Bunch could be here, but we live all over the country and all over the world. And not everyone could be here today. I was fortunate enough to be able to do it and represent us. And so thank you all for your deep thought. I had fun. I hope you had fun.
Let's go change the library.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Waiters, if you could save me for just a couple minutes.